The sun had barely risen over Times Square, but the studio of Good Morning America was already alive with a practiced kind of chaos. Stagehands adjusted boom mics. Makeup artists dusted powder onto foreheads under the glow of LED panels. In the control room, producers ran down segment cues, unaware that one of the most unforgettable moments in the show's history was just minutes away. That at the center of the controlled whirlwind was Robin Roberts, veteran anchor, consummate professional, a woman who had survived the pressure cooker of live television for decades. Her notes were neatly aligned, her expression composed. Today's guest, Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. The plan was simpler: light segment on humanitarian efforts, a quick highlight of new literacy programs, a few questions about charity, tours, polished, non-controversial. At least, that's what they'd hoped, but Meghan had walked into the studio with a different energy. She arrived early, not fashionably late. No entourage, just one quietly efficient publicist and a single assistant. She was dressed in earth tones, elegant but understated. Her smile was polite but noticeably tight, and her eyes sharp, alert, untrusting, as she sat in the guest chair. She looked around the studio with the air of someone expecting to be ambushed. Robin greeted her warmly, but even in that exchange, something felt tense. And we are live in 3, 2, the red light blinked on. The broadcast began. Good morning, America, Robin began, her voice smooth and familiar. Joining us today is someone who has consistently captured global attention, not just for who she is, but for the work she's chosen to do. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Meghan, it's a pleasure to have you here. Meghan nodded, her lips forming a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you, Robin, it's good to be here. The first few minutes were on script. Meghan talked about her foundation's literacy programs, the importance of access to education in underserved communities. Her latest collaboration with a women-led nonprofit in Detroit. Robin asked, thoughtful follow-ups, nodded appropriately, guided the flow with expertise. But then came the question that shifted everything. You've spoken before, Robin said gently, about the challenges of public life. How has that experience shaped the way you approach your philanthropic work today? A harmless segue, it seemed. Meghan took a slow breath, and then she looked directly at Robin, her expression firm, her voice a degree cooler. That's an interesting way to phrase it, Robin, she said. Because I came here today to speak about literacy, about children's education, about real programs helping real people. But somehow, once again, I find myself fielding questions about my experience, not my work. Robin hesitated, her smile tightening just slightly. Well, Meghan, our audience is also interested in understanding the person behind the projects. Your experiences are part of that story. Meghan leaned forward. Are they? Or have they just become a convenient way to pivot every conversation into palace drama and personal pain? The control room immediately tensed. The director signaled, stand by, his finger hovering over the commercial cue. Robin remained calm. I think it's fair to say that your public journey has been complex, but our goal here is simply to provide context. Context, Meghan repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Or justification for intrusive speculation. A heavy silence. Then, Meghan continued. Your producers sent over a rundown of talking points for this interview. I noticed that more than half of them had nothing to do with the work I'm doing now. They were about protocols, about family tensions, about things I've been trying to move past for years. Robin's composure wavered for the first time. I assure you, that wasn't our intention. Our research team, research. Meghan interrupted. You mean tabloid rehashes and anonymous palace sources? Robin took a breath. We prepared for every guest, thoroughly, it's standard protocol. Meghan's tone hardened. Standard protocol is exactly the problem. The tension now was unmistakable, leaking from the screen into living rooms across America. Viewers leaned in. Phones came out. Social media lit up like a storm front. I've been doing this a long time, Robin said carefully, and we always strive to be respectful. Meghan didn't flinch. Was it respectful when your network gave a platform to people who've never met me, yet feel comfortable calling me manipulative? Was it respectful when stories ran about my family without so much as a fact check with my team? We covered developments that were newsworthy. Robin replied, that's our job. No, Meghan said sharply, your job is to report facts, not to reinforce bias dressed up as curiosity. The crew shifted nervously behind the cameras. One assistant whispered into a headset, should we cut? But Robin pressed forward. Meghan, with all due respect, you've made public statements that invited scrutiny. You gave that interview. You authored that podcast. You chose to discuss private matters in very public ways. That opens the door to questions. And yet, none of those questions, Meghan fired back, seem to involve the actual work. None of them ask how many children we've reached this year, how many women we've trained, how many communities we've funded. It's always about the noise, never the substance. Robin leaned back slightly, folding her hands. But don't you think people have a right to wonder how you reconcile being both a private citizen and a global public figure? Meghan's eyes flashed. The real question is why you think I should choose one or the other. A longer pause now. Robin spoke, carefully, because that's what comes with public platforms. Public accountability. Meghan sat back, her arms crossed now. Accountability, yes, but to whom? The public, or the media that tells them who I am before I ever get the chance. Robin raised her voice slightly. It's not just about who you are, or it's about how you've chosen to tell your story on your terms, in exclusive interviews, in high-profile documentaries. You criticize the press, and then you monetize the narrative. Meghan's expression went cold. You think, I'm profiting off pain. I think, Robin said, that you've been selective about the truth. And with that, the temperature in the room plummeted. Meghan leaned in. Selective. Robin, I gave one of the most vulnerable interviews of my life. What did your network do? You ran analysis panels afterward, dissecting my tone, questioning my sincerity, framing me as either a victim or a villain. You never even considered that maybe, just maybe, I was telling the truth. Robin didn't blink. People are allowed to ask questions, Meghan, just as you're allowed to speak. But you don't just ask. Meghan shot back. You judge. You frame. You edit. Now both women were sitting forward, elbows on the table. Voices low but electric. You wanted me on this show, Meghan said, but you didn't want to hear what I actually had to say. You wanted the sanitized version, the royal light narrative, the polite girl who doesn't make waves. Well, that's not me anymore. Robin met her gaze. And maybe the world deserves to know what comes after the waves. Meghan's face softened for the briefest second. After the waves, she repeated, there's usually silence. And then, for those who survive clarity, Robin nodded slowly. So clarify. I didn't leave for privacy, Meghan said. I left for peace. I left because I realized silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the people hurting you. She paused, then said clearly, I'd rather be hated for telling the truth than loved for playing a role. Robin nodded again, her voice quieter now. Then let's talk about the truth. But before either of them could continue, a producer's voice came through the earpiece, hard out in 30 seconds. Robin glanced at the clock. Meghan noticed. Running out of time, she said, always. Robin replied, and with that, the interview faded to commercial. But the story, it was just getting started. When the show returned from commercial break, the studio looked the same, lights still glowing, cameras still rolling, Robin Roberts still seated in her anchor chair. But everything had changed. The energy had shifted. The atmosphere was tight, almost brittle, as if any word could shatter it completely. Meghan Markle was still seated across from her. Posture impeccable, gaze unwavering. Viewers across the country leaned in from couches and cafe counters, glued to the screen. The show's producers had debated cutting the segment short. They hadn't, and now, everyone was watching. Before the break, Robin began, her voice lower, more deliberate. We were discussing the difference between media framing and personal narrative. That's a sanitized way of putting it, Meghan replied. We were discussing how the media builds people up only to tear them down and how often that tearing is reserved for women who don't play by the rules. Robin didn't flinch. So let's talk about the rules. Meghan, you've spent the past few years rebranding your public image through interviews, productions, podcast deals, speeches, and yet, whenever anyone questions the decisions behind that rebranding, it's labeled an attack. It's not a rebrand, Meghan said sharply. It's recovery. From relentless misrepresentation, from public gaslighting, from the trauma of being dehumanized, but you also control your platforms now. Robin countered, isn't that what you wanted? I wanted fairness, Meghan shot back. Not a microphone. Not a brand. Just the ability to speak without being misquoted or weaponized. Robin leaned forward. But when you speak, Meghan, you speak from a platform few others have. With that reach comes responsibility. Do you accept that? I do, Meghan said, but I also believe that responsibility doesn't mean silence. And responsibility also doesn't mean immunity from criticism, Robin said, her tone crisp. Criticism is fair. Meghan replied, but mischaracterization is not. There's a difference between asking tough questions and digging wounds for entertainment. Robin's jaw tightened. Are you accusing this show of doing that today? I'm saying, Meghan answered, that this segment started with a script and that script was never about literacy. It was about provocation, dressed up as journalism. From the control room, one of the senior producers groaned. We've completely lost control. But the director didn't cut, he whispered. This is television history. Let it roll. Robin placed her note cards down, folding her hands in. Then let's stop pretending. You've made powerful accusations against an ancient institution. You've challenged royalty, culture, and press norms. Do you believe there's a part of you that craves that kind of disruption? Meghan blinked. That's a loaded question. It's an honest one. I never craved disruption, Meghan said, but I won't apologize for being disruptive if the system itself is broken. Change is never polite. It's messy. It makes people uncomfortable, and I refuse to stay quiet just to preserve someone else's comfort. Robin looked down at her notes, then back up. You've said repeatedly that you were silenced while within the royal family, but since leaving, you've had more media exposure than most heads of state. Doesn't that contradict the narrative of being voiceless? No, Meghan said, her voice firm, because having a microphone now doesn't erase the years when I had none. It doesn't erase the stories told about me, without me, and it certainly doesn't erase the trauma that silence created. Robin paused, but your critics would say, Meghan interrupted. Critics will always say something. They have. For years, I've learned that no matter how measured my words are, someone will twist them. So now, I speak for the people who can't. You've aligned yourself with social justice movements, with activism, with redefining royalty. Robin said, but some argue that it's performative, that it's branding more than belief. Meghan tilted her head slightly. What part of my lived experience do you consider performative? Robin, the miscarriages, the suicidal thoughts, the global press spinning everything I did into scandal. I'm asking the questions our viewers have, Robin said. Then maybe your viewers need better questions. The studio air snapped like a live wire. Robin adjusted in her seat. Do you believe you've made mistakes? Of course I have, Meghan answered without hesitation. But owning mistakes doesn't mean surrendering your truth. I was imperfect, but I was also unheard. And when a person is both, the world only sees the flaws. Robin nodded slowly. That's fair. They stared at each other for a moment. Two women, both seasoned, both public-faced, both warned from carrying narratives they didn't entirely author. I want to believe you came here today with good intentions, Robin said. I did, Meghan replied, but intentions mean nothing when the system is designed to undermine them. Robin hesitated, then asked, why did you agree to this interview? Then, why put yourself through this again? Meghan looked straight into the camera, because someone's watching this right now, someone who's been gaslit, ignored, misrepresented, someone afraid to speak up, and if seeing me sit here, refusing to be boxed in, gives them courage, then it's worth it. The control room was silent. No one reached for the cut switch now. Robin took a long breath. You're not easy to interview. I'm not here to make anyone's job easy, Meghan said. I'm here to tell the truth. A small but audible gasp from one crew member off camera. Robin shifted in her chair, then unexpectedly let out a soft laugh. Well, Meghan, whether you meant to or not, you've just changed this conversation. Good, Meghan said, relaxing slightly. It needed changing. Then Robin did something rare. She put down her notes and spoke plainly. For what it's worth, I don't agree with everything you've said. But I do respect that you're willing to stand in the storm. Sometimes, Meghan replied, the only way to stop the storm is to walk into it. Another silence. But this one was different, less combative, more reflective. There was no resolution. No neat bow. Just two women, live on national television, confronting the chaos that lives between perception and truth. Robin adjusted her earpiece, her voice softer now. We're going to take one final break. When we return, we'll hear about Meghan's literacy initiative and how it's changing the lives of young girls in underserved communities. As the segment faded to commercial, Meghan sat quietly in her chair, her shoulders finally lowering a fraction. Robin, still seated across from her, glanced down at the note cards she hadn't used. In that brief pause, neither woman spoke, but they didn't need to. The silence said enough. Epilogue post-broadcast fallout. Within minutes of airing, clips from the interview flooded social media. Trending hashtags erupted across platforms. Hashtag Meghan Unfiltered. Hashtag Robin vs Markle. Hashtag Truth Live on Air. Some hailed Meghan as fearless. Others accused her of grandstanding. Robin Roberts received both praise and backlash for pushing as hard as she did. Media analysts debated the ethics of the exchange, calling it everything from a modern reckoning to a PR disaster. But no one could deny what had happened. The script had been torn apart in real time, live, for all to see. In a world of controlled messaging, this was raw truth. Messy, furious, human, and the world would be talking about it for years.